All right, hello to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Remeisha Shade. A lot to talk about, of course. We are closely tracking a monstrous, powerful Category 2 Hurricane Francine in the Gulf of Mexico. That is the big news as of the latest advisory, the 4 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Francine has increased from a Category 1 hurricane to a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane. That means that we now have had not one, not two, not three, but 4 hurricanes so far for the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. Of course, Beryl, which briefly was a Category 5 and hit Houston, of course, as an 80-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. Of course, we had Debbie that impacted parts of Florida and the Carolinas as a Category 1 at one point. Ernesto grew to be a Category 2 hurricane. And now we have Francine, which is still churning in the Gulf of Mexico, now up to Category 2 status. The next name on that list would be Gordon. Hopefully we don't get that anytime soon, but we are, of course, monitoring additional chances for these systems to get going over the next several days. But of greatest concern right now would be Hurricane Francine. You can see that 1 quickly shifted to a 2 over the last hour. That's because Francine is now a Category 2 hurricane. Also, I want you to notice on our Francine satellite that it is getting very, very close to making landfall right along that middle Louisiana Gulf Coast. I think over the next 30 minutes to an hour, we will likely have an official landfall for Hurricane Francine. So that means that risk for storm surge, for the several inches of rain, for the widespread damaging wind gusts that could be above 100 miles per hour is increasing, and it is likely going to be going downhill as far as that weather is concerned for much of the Louisiana Gulf Coast. All right, here's a look at our FOXRAD radar, and you can see that over the last hour or so, there's a ton of rain impacting a big portion of central and southern Louisiana. New Iberia, Lafayette, Opelousas getting in on some of those outer rain bands, and this is actually the eye wall. These are those intense thunderstorms associated with the eye wall. Those are the storms right around that center of circulation, or that eye, and you can see that eye wall slowly starting to come on shore and getting closer and closer to Baton Rouge, starting to push over into portions of Morgan City, and we are getting some of those outer rain bands lashing the New Orleans area as well. Also, I want to show you that dark red box underneath. That is a tornado watch that is in place through tonight for much of the Louisiana Gulf Coast and even areas farther inland. So there's a tornado risk to worry about as well. All right, here's the latest with Hurricane Francine. Maximum sustained winds are now, as I mentioned, up to 100 miles per hour. That makes it a Category 2. Of course, anything above 95 miles per hour would take it into that Category 2 status. So that is where we are with Hurricane Francine. Pressure is falling and it's down to 972 millibars, and we have movement to the northeast around 17 miles per hour. So we did note that it did pick up speed as we went through the day today. So it is likely going to be making landfall over the next hour or so. It should be pushing very close to Lafayette, Baton Rouge. It's going to move to the west of New Orleans. Morgan City will be impacted big time, so there will definitely be the potential for wind damage and storm surge right along the coast, and of course that tornado threat. So as we go into the next few hours, it's likely going to maintain hurricane strength. As we go into tomorrow morning, likely a strong tropical storm as it moves farther inland and kind of loses some of that steam as it moves away from that energy source, which is the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So by 1 a.m. Thursday, 65-mile-per-hour winds, and then quickly weakening to a tropical depression by late Thursday, and then into Friday, likely a remnant low as it kind of meanders and falls apart over the Memphis, Tennessee area. But at this point, Hurricane Francine is a 100-mile-per-hour dangerous Category 2 hurricane, and it will likely bring some significant impacts to the Louisiana Gulf Coast. What about for southeast Texas? Well, it looks like there will be the potential for maybe 1 to 2 feet of storm surge locally, but the biggest impacts from that storm surge will be for the majority of that middle Louisiana Gulf Coast, south of Franklin, south of Morgan City, and south of the Lafayette area. We are going to have the potential for storm surge up to 10 feet, 5 to 10 feet in that red shaded area. So this is something we are monitoring very closely. Of course, many impacts impacting millions of people expected from Hurricane Francine. In fact, I want to show you the expected tropical storm force wind fill, and it is going to cover a big chunk of Louisiana, even into southern Mississippi. There's a decent shot for some of these tropical storm force winds, which would be from about 39 to 73 miles per hour. So notice the area in the pink color there. That is the highest risk, a very high chance for tropical storm force winds stretching from New Iberia to Baton Rouge down to New Orleans, and of course Morgan City is included in that as well. Lafayette, pretty high chance for wind gusts of tropical storm force. Of course, where we have the eye wall passing through, hurricane force winds will be likely. Back across the Houston area, we are not included in that threat for tropical storm force winds, so that is good news. Of course, the track of Francine continued to shift off to the east, and that kind of took us out of that cone of uncertainty, and it also took us out of the biggest threat from this system. So less than an inch of rain here, but we could see maybe as much as 10, 11, 12 inches of rain for parts of Louisiana. So we are monitoring things closely. I want to take it over to meteorologist John Dawson for a closer look at what's happening locally with our weather. We're not expecting a ton of rain, John, but let us know some of the impacts that we could get from Francine brushing by our area.
Yeah, it is brushing by, and it continues now to have even less impacts. I think we've already kind of peaked as far as those impacts that are expected here in southeast Texas. But let's kind of go through things a little bit, because we're not completely done with Francine, but everything's going to be manageable. It's not going to be something that we're overly concerned with. And there is a lot more to talk about with Francine, and we're going to follow up here with Remeisha here in just a second. But for right now, just note that we do still have a coastal flood advisory. They took the warning and they downgraded it to an advisory, that being the National Weather Service. So a 1 foot, maybe 2 foot storm surge at the most, but we're even beginning to get past that opportunity for that. Although this will officially go until tomorrow evening. We'll look for some breezy conditions. Again, that's confined right to the coast. If you've been in the downtown Houston area, our tower cam here in the Galleria, this is probably what you've been seeing most of the time. Just those dark clouds, a little bit of a bright spot in the sun trying to peek through occasionally. And there has been an isolated shower or two also kind of rolling on through at times, moving through the area. We've got those temperatures right now in the mid 80s when you've been avoiding the rain for a while, able to kind of warm up to the The dew points are climbing back up as well. I noticed that this morning as I was out and about moving through the neighborhood. We've had those dew points in the 60s over the weekend with that front that moved through, that much drier air than what we kind of are used to around here at this time of the year. But that makes it feel like 92 degrees, so still a little bit warmer. So if you haven't seen rain in a while, you're going to be in the 80s. So even Galveston right now at 86 degrees. We've got 87 for the folks in Baytown. Tomball sitting at 80 degrees right now, and you can see a little bit of an isolated downpour here or there. We're really watching those winds over to our friends in Louisiana. You can see that our winds are less than 10 miles an hour across most of the Houston area, and this gives us another idea of some of those powerful winds out in the Gulf of Mexico. This Shell Ship Shoal station there, they had a recorded 92 mile an hour gust at one point. So powerful winds that are out there, that's going to be impacting Louisiana. We talked about the rain chances. You'll notice Liberty County with a little bit of an isolated downpour or two, just rolling past Bolivar Peninsula, moving into the northwestern corner of Harris County, also seeing a little bit of that rain right now. This will be moving out into the coast, off the coast soon, but we'll keep this really chances of rain with us through the rest of the evening. But the majority of that rainfall, the dangerous rainfall, much more over to the east into Louisiana. That's going to spread up into Mississippi, as well as this system will continue to track as a weaker system, but bringing quite a bit of rain all the way up, basically up into Tennessee, where some of that rain is going to be expected. This could cause some dangerous flooding for those parts of the country as that continues to move up. So back here closer to home, look for those breezy conditions to continue to calm as we move through the evening. As soon as Francine makes its landfall, the weakening will start to happen. So Category 2 right now, 100-mile-an-hour winds. By the time we get to 10 o'clock or so tonight, we'll even be struggling to keep it at hurricane strength, but probably for a little bit after 10. As this system continues to fall apart, it really focuses on becoming a rainmaker, and we talked about all that rain that it's going to take as it moves on up towards Memphis, bringing that rain along the way. So kind of wrapping things up here with our local forecast. Look for those temperatures to max out in the 80s today because of all the cloud cover. That counterclockwise rotation around Francine starts pulling in some more air from inland of the U.S. and not off of the Gulf of Mexico. So that's drier air. So we're going to have more sunshine in the forecast, lower chances for rain as we wrap up the week, move into the weekend. You'll notice, though, we're able to keep the temperatures back to our pretty close to our seasonal numbers with lower 90s for the high. But that is a little bit warmer than what we've been dealing with. Those mornings will start turning muggy once again with temperatures in the mid 70s. Those humidity levels also going to be fairly high. So we usually see this if we're here in Houston and you've been around for a while, you see a tropical system make a landfall in Louisiana. Our weather here turns very quiet for the days afterwards as that wind from the north begins to just stabilize everything. We'll be looking at a lot more sunshine than we will clouds as we wrap up the week and move into the weekend. But as mentioned, there's still a lot to talk about with Francine. Let's get back into the studio with meteorologist Remeisha Shade with, again, some of those computer models and what we're expecting here as we move through the next 24 to 48 hours.
That's right, JD. A lot of people, I'm sure, are wondering about the track of Hurricane Francine. And this is our exclusive Fox model, able to show you what the clouds and the rain are expected to do into the future hour by hour. And we are tracking Hurricane Francine for you today. Notice around 5 p.m. it's in the process of making landfall in between New Iberia and to the south and west of the New Orleans area. You can clearly see that eye wall, that center of circulation, and all of that tremendously heavy rain rotating around it. So the worst of the weather pushing into that middle Louisiana Gulf Coast over the next few hours. Then as we go into 9 p.m. tonight, it's, of course, over land, but you could still see that structure still holding together, likely still a Category 1 hurricane by this point, and still bringing a ton of heavy rain to New Orleans, starting to push into portions of southern Mississippi, and still bringing heavy rain to the Baton Rouge area. But it looks like by 9-10 o'clock, weather conditions will be improving for southwestern parts of Louisiana and for Houston, of course, as Francine pulls away. Even that low chance for rain and the gusty winds will kind of start to go away for us. Big time flood threat, heavy rain threat increasing Thursday morning for areas like Jackson, Mississippi, and over into parts of Alabama. Heavy rain building into Montgomery, Alabama, maybe all the way up to Huntsville. By Thursday and Friday, it looks like if you are heading to Memphis, if you have friends, family in Memphis, or if you are in Memphis, you're going to have a potential for heavy rain that could lead to flooding. So Francine, even though it will be in a weakened state over the next few days, will still have big impacts as far as that flood threat and also the threat for severe storms, including a few tornadoes, especially for southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and eventually up towards the Memphis area by Thursday and Friday. So overall, it looks like the most severe impacts from Francine will be coming this evening and tonight across Louisiana, but gradually impacting parts of Arkansas, western Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. Back closer to home for the Houston area, here is the good news for us. Francine will be pulling away from us. We are already on that clean side or western side of that hurricane, so we didn't really get a ton of impacts, but even the gusty wind and that risk for minor coastal flooding will start to go away. Overall, though, our rain chances will still be with us, but they're going to be low for Thursday. through the weekend and even into early next week, only a 10 to 20% shot for an isolated shower or storm. So that means great weekend weather. The temperatures will actually start to heat back up and rain chances will be limited. At this point, it does not appear that any other tropical systems will head our way at least through the next 5 days or so. However, let's check out our tropical history. And as far as hurricane season is concerned, yesterday was the peak of hurricane season, September 10th, today, September 11th. So we are right in the middle of what is typically the busiest portion of our hurricane season. So we are still keeping a close eye on the potential for a few additional tropical storms and hurricanes that could develop, especially between now and the middle of October. I think if we get anything going, that's going to be the time frame, the highest likelihood for more systems to develop. By the time we get to late October, November, notice the activity kind of starts to lessen and wind down. But of course, we will be keeping a close eye on additional systems that could develop out there. And of course, we will have updates for you daily as we go through the remainder of this hurricane season. But as of today, of course, we are closely tracking Hurricane Francine, soon to make landfall along the Louisiana Gulf Coast and then push inland, bringing that threat for heavy rain and flooding, storm surge, and damaging wind gusts. So if you have friends, family in Louisiana, especially along the Gulf Coast, make sure to check on them, make sure they're okay, make sure they're safe, because weather will be going downhill through the evening. Well, that will do it for your tropical update for today. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Remeisha Shade. Stay safe out there.